Hi, everybody. It's Ben Herman coming to you here from Philadelphia today, the day before teams will be traveling to the 2022 edition of NEQT's HSNCT Quiz Bowl Tournament. And one tradition in at least the in-person years past is me making predictions about how the Pennsylvania teams will do at the HSNCT tournament. And this was a weird year. And I figured if there's one thing I can do in terms of keeping the tradition going, it's this. And I've had a lot of players tell me that me predicting them to not do as well as they thought they would was a big motivator and really lit a fire under them. And a lot of them went on to have really great runs at the tournament. So for that reason, if none other, I hope to light those fires again, and hopefully we'll have some Pennsylvania teams finishing pretty highly. So I want to start first with an overall note about the 2021-2 Quiz Bowl season in Pennsylvania. This was a kind of a weird year. It was kind of a light year. There was not that many tournaments in the state this year compared to last year during the lockdown or remote schooling. A lot of tournaments took place online or years prior. And this is a function of the fact that we did, for the most part, go back to in-person tournaments this year due to a lot of conflicts between, staff and so on. Nobody was able to organize online tournaments this year, so that wasn't an option for teams. And then we also lost a lot of tournaments to COVID cancellation, particularly the Omicron wave knocked out several tournaments in January and February that would have taken place without it. Lack of interest for some events. It was not the most prolific season for the Quiz Bowl in terms of events. In terms of teams, we had about 50 teams participate this year in pure middle invitationals, which is up from the 30 or so that ventured for an online season last year, but it's down from the 80 to 90 we typically would have seen in the years leading up to the pandemic. So it is what it is. There's nothing to be done about it. But that doesn't mean that these players are any less good. It doesn't mean that these players are any less skilled. I still think they're going to do pretty well at HSNCT, and even though I don't have as much data to make my predictions off of, I'm still going to make a fool of myself and see what I can come up with, and hopefully I am under on every single one of them. All right, so with that, I'm going to quickly share my screen and bring up the field map of the Pennsylvania area. In past years, we went alphabetically, but for this, I'm going to go west to east for my prediction. Let's start with Alderdice. Alderdice is a team that is the only team representing the Pittsburgh area from Pennsylvania this year, kind of alongside Morgantown in West Virginia. And then shout out to our friends at Morgantown, who I hope do well as well. And it really was kind of those two schools and Pittsburgh Central Catholic that were leading the way for Pittsburgh tournaments this year. Dice is a young team. A lot of their best players are freshmen and sophomores. That is good for the future because it means that they've got a lot of potential. But that can also be bad in the present because it means that those players might not have as much experience with the kind of difficulty they're going to be seeing at HSNCT. And they may not have as much depth as people that have been studying for 3-4 years and specialize. That being said, they did pretty well. They could hang out with teams that did pretty well at the small school nationals this year. Consistently was beating those kinds of teams or close losses to those kinds of teams. I think this is a team that is growing, and maybe next year will be a contender. But this year, I'm going to say 4-6 for Alderdice. They're the kind of team that will finish in the middle of the pack at HSNCT. This is what most teams do. And I think that they're a team not to be counted out. Next, we'll move over to Carlisle. Carlisle is a humongous wild card because with Carlisle, we did not see them play a pure middle invitational at all. The last time they played a pure middle invitational was 2015 or 16. I don't even remember. They did come to a Quaker Fall Open at Penn one time, but since then they have not been back. They qualified based on the virtue of winning the Capital Area League in the Harrisburg area, that uses some NQT questions and is a qualifier. They then went to the Pennsylvania State Tournament, which is another problematic tournament. It's not really a great format and can't really be used to predict, as readers of the HSQB forum probably know from a recent thread about that tournament. So Carlisle, I'll go 3-7 for Carlisle. They are a pretty good school, but you have to bet against them at HSNCT because of the lack of experience. When we've seen teams do this in the past, the first year Armstrong came, the time Jim Thorpe came, these teams have only played a local league and who qualified based on the virtue of that come to HSNCT. They usually go 3-7, maybe 2-8 if they're unlucky, or 4-6 if they're lucky. But 3-7 seems like a safe bet based on the lack of experience on Carlisle's part. Cedar Crest, these guys are going to be strong. I think they're probably the consensus third or fourth best team in the state of Pennsylvania right now. Danny Keelan is their best player. And he brings a lot of history and so on. That's going to play really well. He scores very highly. The rest of the team all scores 15, 20 points a game. It's a very rounded team. It's a team where 4 people are buzzing. And all things being equal, I tend to bet on those teams over teams that are reliant on one player because, you've got more built-in security against somebody having off game or somebody getting tired and having to sleep, whatever the case might be. So Cedar Crest is strong. They won the Manheim Township tournament that happened in December in an incredible final, like the best game I've ever seen, maybe. And it was an overtime win against Tower Hill from Delaware. And again, shout out to Tower Hill and our Delaware friends. Hope you do well this weekend. So Cedar Crest definitely has the chops to go far. This is a playoff team. I feel pretty confident this is going to be a playoff team, which will get Cedar Crest back into the playoffs for the first time since 2016 at HSNCT. And I'm going to say they're going to go 1 win. I'm going to give them a playoff win, which tournament this year, I mean, the numbers changed, and the size of the field is a little smaller than the last HSNCTs that were in person, so I don't know offhand what place that is, but it's usually just outside the top 50, or tied 60 some, 70 some. I think that's about where Cedar Crest is this year, and most of their scoring is still, they're not seniors, so watch out for Cedar Crest next year. I think they're going to go deep next year, but this year we'll say playoffs and a playoff win. Manheim Township, 2 teams coming from Township. There is no surer bet at HSNCT for Pennsylvania than Township in the modern era. They've always done well. They have made the playoffs every single year since I've been going to the tournament. That's 2015. This was the first time I was staff. So why would I bet against them? They're just as good as always. AZ is great. Dia is great. Ellie is a very good lit fine arts specialist. They're all great. They're really good to the players, and they're going to do what Township always does. High powers, well coached, relatively few nags for a top team. In terms of the play strategy, I think in the last few years have really moved towards a high risk, high reward play. Township tends to play a little more cautiously, but I think that can also work in their favor. They have wins against some of the big teams from New York and DC this year. So there's no reason to doubt the Township won't do well. I'll say 3 playoff wins this year or something like that, which typically takes you to tied 20-30, somewhere in that range. That feels about right for Township this year in terms of their A team. B team, we'll go 5-5. They're probably the best of the B teams, or left, lower letters than that. Going from Pennsylvania this year, always do pretty well, but never do incredible. So 5-5 seems like a safe bet for Manheim Township B. Berwick, another very strong school. This is a team that's been around the circuit for a long time. I've known Berwick and their coach Todd Gunther for 6-7 years now, and they've always been a steady presence. But they often were not one of the top teams. It's starting to change. They've really improved over the last year, and they're another team that's very young. their top scorers are underclassmen. So Berwick is a team that I think is, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. I don't even think they're going to go 5-5 this year. Being in the Northeast, they've had fewer opportunities to play top competition than the teams in either the Southeast or the Southwest part of the state. A lot of the Southwest top talent was also small school, so they played that tournament instead of this one. But they are the best team in the Northeast this year. I think that was pretty clear. And they're going to probably take their knocks because this is going to be the first time these players have played questions these hard and really seen what it's like. But they're setting themselves up for the future really well. As for this year, I'm going to be optimistic. I'll say 4-6. I think they probably will be on the lower end of the 4-6 teams this year. But I think that'd be a good start for them, where they would hopefully build towards playoff contention in 23 or 24. All right, so now let's zoom down here to Chester County, where we've got 3 schools attending, looks like. Downtown STEM is the first one. Team I didn't see as much this year, but they were pretty good last year. They were consistently about the 12th maybe team in the state, and on the online series where we were all playing together. And they graduated nobody from that team. Yedderud Chaudhry's their best player, and he's pretty good all around. Certainly seen him get some good buzzes when I've had the chance to staff for STEM. As many of you probably remember, in 2018, this is a school that finished tied 8th behind Vishwa and Anish and Rohan, and that was a wonderful team. Since then, the team basically fell off, died, restarted, and it's come back now. So this is going to be kind of their attempt to revive themselves. Didn't see the results on the buzzer to suggest that they're going to be in the top half of the field at HSNCT this year, but this is going to be another team I think's got a good chance. 4-6. Also, I'll say 4-6 is my prediction. 5-5 wouldn't shock me, but I'll be conservative on this one. And another team that is still got in the tank and they're improving. So next year would be the year for STEM, more than this year. Henderson, another team that had a legendary run where they finished tied 12th in 2019, which is one of the wackiest, most unexpected runs that I can ever remember any team from any state going on at HSNCT. Nobody predicted them going much deeper than maybe one playoff win, and they just kept winning and winning. Following to that, they had a little rebuild, but they're back this year, and even though it was sent the end of last year. Quite strong, well-rounded. Henderson's not a team that wows yet. Like, they're not going to have a bunch of powers. They're not going to have deep buzzes in science or something like that. But they are a team that is really good at the basics and is not a team you can sleep on. Like, if you're a middle of the pack team playing Henderson this year, like, don't neg a lot, because they're going to be able to convert those, and they'll probably 20 those bonuses, pretty frequently, and you can get behind real quick. So I'm going to say Henderson's a 5-5 team this year. They're probably, I'll say, yeah, they're the strongest team that won't make the playoffs in Pennsylvania this year. Pretty good overall. Yeah, and yeah, don't sleep on Henderson completely. Wouldn't shock me if they made the playoffs, but I wouldn't put my money on it. Great Valley sending 4 teams to HSNCT this year. In the modern era of Pennsylvania Quiz Bowl, which I usually say starts about 2013, I can remember some C teams going to HSNCT from our state. This is the first time I can remember a D team. Incredible. As for the A team, they're going to be the highest finishing PA team this year. I feel pretty confident. The external pundits agree with me. Going into HSNCT, Great Valley is the highest Grover or Moreland before that ranked team we've had since the prehistoric state college team. That's pre-modern as far as I consider it. Quiz Bowl was so different back then, and there was no Pennsylvania circuit to speak of. State college was almost entirely playing out of state. So Great Valley is probably the strongest on paper team going in that we've seen this year. Anish is wonderful. If I was going to make a PA Quiz Bowl Mount Rushmore for this modern era that I've seen, he would be on it. Probably along with AZ on Township this year, and Vishwa from STEM, and Alex Schmidt from Lehigh Valley Academy back in the day. He's great, like all over the distribution, consistently scoring over 100 points a tournament, consistently ranked as one of the top players in the game. Going to be the X factor they need to go deep. How deep they go will depend on two factors. Nolan, great NQT player, but he's a little streaky. So if Nolan is hot on Sunday afternoon, Great Valley, the sky is the limit. If Nolan's running cold, they might have an early exit at HSNCT, which unfortunately has become kind of something that Great Valley has a few of on the resume. The other X factor is Luca. He's their sophomore. That's going to be kind of the next great at Great Valley after Anish and Nolan graduate this year. It's how well does he scale? Is he ready for questions this difficult? He scored pretty well at some hard invitationals and things this year, but is it going to translate to nationals yet? If Luca translates and Nolan gets hot, Great Valley it can beat any team in the country. If not, they're still going to be strong. As for my prediction for Great Valley, I'll say tied for 8. I don't think they're going to make the Super 7. I don't think just because it's such a deep field this year across the nation. But I think they're as good as the Downingtown STEM team in 2018 and the Winchester Thurston team in 2017, which are the two highest finishers we've ever had in that modern era from Pennsylvania. And again, State College won back in the day, and it's a shame that they didn't play anything. I think they were not able to travel due to COVID restrictions, and they're kind of isolated. So this would be the first HSNCT without State College attending since the first one ever. So that's a sad, but hopefully we'll see them next year. As for the B, C, and D teams in Great Valley, we'll say 5-5 for B, 3-7 for C, and 2-8 for D. I don't think Great Valley is quite as deep as they were the last couple of years. They were the best B team in the state for a while, as well as the A team last year. This year, I think Township's the better B team, but good that these players are getting some experience, so that way they'll, be combining with together and being, the Great Valley's future and keep high finishes going for a while more. Emmaus is another circuit stalwart. They've been to HSNCT a few times before at this point, so they'll know what to expect. Stats this year weren't amazing. They hung around in the tournaments, and but they were never something that I think people consider particularly tough out. So I'll say 4-6 as well for Emmaus. That's a pretty good standard prediction for a team that is solid, but hasn't really shown you too much upside, I think. Most teams will finish in the middle of the field, and I think actually this year Pennsylvania is a little polar. I'm predicting fewer 5-5s, but that's just the nature of the game. Moravian finished second at the Open Division of SSNCT last month, so they're going to be good. Very balanced team. It's hard to tell who their best player is. It can vary depending on the game or the tournament. Probably Divic. Eric's not far behind. They're just all around a good team. Power a lot for a small school like that. They're a team that's just gotten better and better and better over the last 5 years, and now they're a real big contender in the state. I'll say they're right about where Cedar Crest is. So I'll say 6-4, win a playoff game. I would say Moravian is the more likely of the two to go 7-3, because again, they're more balanced in terms of their scoring, and I err towards teams like that. But if they go 7-3, I don't see that making that much of a difference. Maybe they also get one win, so they would go one farther because they get the extra loss in the winners bracket. But yeah, 6-4 and a playoff win is probably about where I see Moravian. I should say I didn't say their morning, or not morning, Saturday plus Sunday morning numbers for the deep run teams I have predicted. I'd say Township probably will go 7-3, and Great Valley will go 8-2 in the preliminary phase of the tournament. Wissahickon is next up. Another team that's been to HSNCT a few times. They were a bottom feeder in Southeast PA for a long time. Very old team. They're one of the oldest teams with a consistent pyramidal playing history in the state. Actually, now that we had State College broken up because they didn't play anything this year, Wissahickon might be the longest, because they've had a continuous history since about 2008, but never were a contender. This is the first year they became like a pretty solid team. They really improved, studied hard, and they have a good balanced team. Bonus conversion is good, but power numbers aren't particularly impressive. They finished in the playoff, but not near the tippy top of the Manheim Township tournament, for instance. They did pretty well in a new league, which is another one of those kind of iffy leagues to have some good questions, but maybe not great format. So let's say yet again, 4-6. I'm predicting too many 4-6 teams. I probably should have had some of those at 5-5, but it is what it is. Lastly, we go to Friends Select, sending 2 teams. Friends Select is another one of those teams that, like, some years are better than others, but you can always bet on them being good. Well coached by Ian Lochte, well balanced, don't have real weak areas of distribution. They can buzz. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's math or pop culture or religion or whatever it might be, but there's nothing that'll stump them that way. So they'll be able to consistently get points, and their power rate isn't as high as your Great Valleys, your Moravians, your Cedar Crests, but they'll do well. This is a 5-5 team. I think Friends Select A is a 5-5 team. Did pretty well at HSNCT too, although they didn't go as far as Moravian. As for Friends Select B, 3-7. 3-7 sounds about right for that team. Yeah. So I think that's where we find ourselves going into the tournament. And I'm excited for it. It's the first time we've been at HSNCT in 3 years. It should be really fun. I'm going to be there. So if you see me, if you're from Pennsylvania or our friends in West Virginia or Delaware or upstate New York that we interact with a lot, come say hi. Don't be shy. I know several other folk from the Pennsylvania community are going to be there, whether they're in the state still or they've come from afar. Looking forward to seeing a lot of friends I haven't seen in person since 2019. And I hope every team has a great time. Have fun. Don't beat yourself up. It's only a game. And have a great time in Atlanta. So with that, I'm signing off. And we'll see you probably for the end of season video. Until then, happy buzzing.